Well, we could do this the Spinal Tap way and just say it's one of the Neal Morse albums of all time. Or I could give a little more detail than that. But I'm not going to take up too much of your time with this review just because there's not really a whole lot to talk about with the Dreamer Joseph Part 1. So, once again, this is a Neal Morse concept album that sort of takes biblical stories, in this case, the story of Joseph. It's sort of a continuation of the Jesus Christ the Exorcist album released a couple years ago. And, you know, it's in a very similar vein to that as being sort of a theatrical kind of Neal Morse record. This one, I think more so than Jesus Christ the Exorcist, kind of takes you on a little bit more of a traditional progressive rock trip. It's not as bogged down with, like, all these different characters. The different characters do come in on a lot of songs, but this time Neal Morse does the lion's share of the vocals, playing the titular character. And the cast of musicians is pretty impressive. You have Steve Morse playing guitars on some tracks, no relation to Neal Morse, and Eric Gillette from the Neal Morse Band, kind of a tried and true collaborator with Neal, as well as a host of other drummers, keyboardists, vocalists. Not a lot of very big, well-known names, but they do perform their jobs very well throughout this record. As I alluded to in the intro, this is kind of just another Neal Morse record, and the last time I said that in a Neal Morse review, I got dogpiled on by the whole lot of yous. And I want to say this as sort of a rebuke of anybody who was going to criticize me for saying that, you know, this is a pretty bone stock Neal Morse record. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Neal Morse has a style that he does, and he does it well, and he does it well on this record as well. There are not a whole lot of moments of him reinventing the wheel, although I Will Wait on the Lord has a very, you know, church hymn kind of approach that I don't think I've really heard too often in his solo albums, despite the fact that he predominantly sings very Christian themes. And, I mean, even if there's not a lot of him reinventing the wheel, the stuff that he does do on here is great. I mean, Wait On You has a really excellent guitar solo. Heaven in Charge of Hell is just a pumped-up anthem, kind of Jim Steinman-esque in its approach. And, of frickin' course, there's an overture on this record. 2 of them, because we're not getting shorted on overtures, although one of them is just a reprise. And he does kind of bust out a bit of a Tarkus-era Emerson, Lake, and Palmer approach, which is kind of cool. I really dig it. Yeah, I mean, it's a Neal Morse, Bible-oriented rock opera. Need I say more? So this is a pretty short review. Basically, all I really have to say beyond that is just, if you're a Neal Morse fan who's very indebted to his sound, really just wants another solid Neal Morse record, this is perfect. Go pick this up. This is a good record. It was an enjoyable listen the whole way through. One thing to note, there aren't really any big epics on this record. I think the longest song on here is about 7 minutes long, and I think it is the overture. And the rest of them are all kind of in the 3 to 5 minute range. The album as a whole is less than an hour. This is part 1, so there's going to be a part 2, and you know, there's some mixed feelings among my peers about that. Some people really like the idea that, you know, he's kind of giving us a short record as sort of a taste of, like, new music rather than just overloading us with tunes. And some of us are a little apprehensive about what might be coming on the next record. But at just a little over an hour long, this is a pretty sizable chunk of music as it is, but maybe a little more easily digestible than some of his longer, more epic releases, ones that have like 2 discs and songs that are 26 minutes long, this is probably going to be something you're going to be able to sort of take in small chunks, maybe a little bit more easily. And like I said, the music here is great. Neal Morse doesn't reinvent the wheel, but he doesn't have to. He just has to do what he does, and he's put out a solid record. Neal Morse knows how to write a good hook. He knows how to write a really good song, and he's done that 16 times on this record. So, you really can't go wrong unless you're someone who's maybe been a little disappointed in the last few Neal Morse releases. Maybe you're somebody who's thinking that Neal Morse's style is getting a little stale for your tastes. And then, if you're in that camp, maybe you'll come away from the Dreamer Joseph Part 1 feeling a little disappointed. It really doesn't add much to his discography. Really, I'm going to echo what a couple of my peers have already said about this record. I wouldn't say it's the best Neal Morse record by a long shot, but it's far from his worst. You could do much worse in Neal Morse's discography than this. This is a pretty good middle ground for those who want his unique style of progressive rock, but maybe don't want to have really big epics. I just want to have, a fun progressive rock album, rock opera about the life of Joseph from the Bible. So, there you have it. The Dreamer, Joseph Part 1 by Neal Morse. Decent record. I have nothing really bad to say about it. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope I'm going to do more reviews in the future. Take care, everybody.